Hello and welcome to the Yarra Valley Living Centre and another episode of Living Well. And today we're crossing over the seas to Taiwan and a particular little place in Taiwan called Tainan. And we're speaking with Jane Lewis, and wonderful to be in Taiwan today. One of my favorite places in the world is Tainan in Taiwan. So Jane, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So I think you obviously love Tainan very much. How long have you lived there?
In Tainan, about, 12 years.
And in Taiwan?
1977, October.
Long time. 77. Lucky.
Long time.
So why did you particularly end up living in Tainan, do you think?
It's funny. The why questions, it's like, obviously, what do I imagine? Tainan has some kind of a magnetic relationship with me. When I first came to visit, it's just like something is different here and I feel it in my whole body and it's intriguing and I can't see what it is, but when I talk to other people, there's other people that have the same sense. It's like, yeah, we don't know the name for what this is, but it's palpable. And so it kind of drew me here.
Historically, it's a little bit important, isn't it?
Yeah, here's the historical story. So the Dutch came here in the early 1600s. There was a fort, basically a trading fort. And it was here for just a couple of decades. And then a flotilla from China. There's very few of these. China isn't known as a naval force, but a flotilla came across from China to here and basically dispersed the Dutch and began a whole new era here. But ever since then, there's been a lot of Western influence here in the South, other places in Taiwan, but it's been consistent here since the early 1600s.
In Tainan? Oh, how interesting.
You've still got some Dutch architecture around. The fort, the original fort, some of the original wall is still there from the fort. Occasionally you find Dutch tiles when you're digging underneath more modern tiles. So there was a Dutch period, there's Portuguese around here, there's some French influence. All of Taiwan belonged to Japan for 50 years starting the late 1800s. So longest history as a city and pretty deep culture, pretty high level of education, I think. The culture is quite unique here.
And the indigenous people, what do you know about their history there?
So I'm no scholar of the indigenous people, but what I hear on the streets. So this is what I go with this. I just notice stories that I hear coming from a lot of people. So there's certainly many indigenous cultures still here and strong and with languages that are still being passed on in some degree to their kids. But so the Dutch era was interesting because when the Chinese came, they got rid of the fort, is a nice way to put it. And the women that they didn't kill or could run away became the possessions of the conquerors. But so you've got Dutch blood, in particular around Tainan. And people talk about the shape of the nose. People talk about that person's got Dutch ancestors. So there's a big mixture of indigenous Chinese and
it's a bit of a melting pot.
Yes.
And I think that could be one reason why you are so at home there, because what I experience from you is that you have such an inclusive personality. I think the more diversity, I would say, the happier you are.
Maybe, that may be, yes.
But even though you're saying that the Dutch were there and the Portuguese, I would say still 99% of the population is, native Taiwanese, whether that's, whatever that's mixed with, but there's not many non-Taiwan, non-native people in Tainan.
So native is an interesting word, and so my mind is going because there's a lot of Aboriginal groups that we're right between the mountains, and most of Taiwan is between the mountains and the ocean.
Yeah.
But there used to be a lot of rich culture up in the mountain that was eventually, let's say, kicked out of the mountain down into this area. So it's a real mixing pot, and the Chinese ancestry people, a lot of them came after Kaxinga, after that flotilla. So, right, what's native is the question that comes up.
Yeah, I don't know what you would call native, but maybe few generations, non-white. I don't know if you can say that, but
I don't know what you can say.
Yeah, I don't know what you can say. But you speak fluent Chinese, so I can imagine you just blend in.
That's a fun. Yes, I speak Jane's version of Chinese. This is what I always say, because this is a form of fluency that's unlike any other person's.
Yeah.
But you say fit in, and it is curious because I move around with lots of different groups of people, and I sometimes sort of lose track of tracking that I'm a Westerner. And then I'm around other Westerners who talk about, as you know, Jane, and then they say something and I go, oh, that's just not my experience. So a lot of people say I am Taiwanese, like inside somewhere, and that feels comfortable.
Yeah, wonderful. And what I have been very inspired by, and I'm still a member and I still read the posts on what you've set up, Studio Tainan. So in Taiwan, you have Line, just like many other places have a WhatsApp group. But I just think this is amazing. So even though I haven't lived there for now nearly 2 years or 1.5 years, I haven't lived in Taiwan, but I just love to see what's happening. Like Clint will put up a post that he's making some kombucha or he's doing baking, and somebody else will be doing composting and somebody else will be doing music, and you've just got this community. It's like an online community that meets according to interest and time, and it's just wonderful. And how many members do you have now on that?
I was looking yesterday, I think there's 125.
Yeah.
And we don't always meet the people who are on there. But what the last person who joined was just a couple of days ago, and usually when someone joins, anyone can invite anyone there. And the person who invites them usually says a few words. Oh, hey, I invited my friend so-and-so because something. So we begin to have a sense of who this person is. And then I often invite the new person. Well, anytime you want, could be now, could be later. Anything you want to tell the group about yourself, feel free. So this person, there was no introduction. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I went and connected with them on the side and just said, oh, you've been invited by that person. So I assume that you've got questions answered by that person, but should you have other questions, feel free to contact me anytime. And this person simply said, yeah, I was having a conversation with my friend. And I said, Taiwan really should have some kind of healers or mindfulness yellow pages. And my friend just simply said, join the Studio Tainan online group.
Yeah.
And I think to me, that's perfect. My name is not the central thing there. But people know that you can come here and you can kind of say anything, and probably someone will be interested in joining you on the side and doing something with it. So that's a topic that's come up a lot in the last few months, is just help the people who are doing, let's say, mindfulness practices, just help them find each other. And I like this person saying yellow pages. It gets a lot of laughter. Yeah.
And when you say mindfulness, I think you mean it in the broadest way. Anyone living consciously, basically, not like mindfulness as a meditation practice per se, but living consciously, living, breathing, living, like that's why we call this place the Yarra Valley Living Centre. Actually, it was its name already, but we wanted to keep that name because the word living, and I think this is what you are capturing when you use that word mindful.
So I don't use the same word all the time. And yes, what you say, and listening to you speak. So this person was beginning to talk about healing. And then we noticed, the word healing, there's a lot of strong opinions about that word. But here's what I thought about while you were talking, is this model I've heard recently from a Chinese medicine doctor, which simply says each human has these three containers. One is spirit, one is energy, one is essence. And so spirit is related to self-awareness, and energy is related to expression, and essence is related to self-care. And so
nice.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. So can you repeat that? Because I think it was very nice. Can you repeat it?
I think I'm just gonna add on a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
So you've got spirit, it's the upper chamber. And spirit is expressed. When this person first told me, he said, "Oh, it's about light." And I went, "Oh, tell me more." He goes, "Well, you see a person, and you, Chinese medicine doctor, can instantly get a sense of the quality of their light." And he goes, "Oh, that's an expression of this spirit energy." So it's light, it's spirit. It's also nourished or practiced by self-awareness. So then he goes on to say, what's presence, Jane? It's like, oh, tell me. This self-awareness, level of self-awareness then is the level to which you can self-express and self-care. So self-expression and self-care then come back to self-awareness and, raise, enhance light and presence. And together that's presence. So he talks about this like cycle of how it all feeds into this. And when I think of healing, I think of that because there is this self-expression, there is the self-awareness, there's the self-care. And where do you draw the lines? They're all connected. So.
And in fact, one of the big attractors in Tainan has been Mr. Wu, who's a quite exceptional healer. And I know some people have lived in Tainan and visited there regularly just for treatment because it's very rare that you meet this quality of healer. Do you want to say something about Dr. Wu and his essence, his spirit? Because it's quite special.
He's amazing. He's been practicing for 30 some years. He was in the first group of students who learned from the priest who came from Switzerland with this book saying, the book that was found in inner China by a Swiss nun when she was retiring. But so, it's just this book. They didn't have any actual practitioners. And so people are learning from the book and practicing. And the Swiss priest was assigned to Taiwan in his first assignment. And Mr. Wu was in, fourth, fifth group of students that learned from him. So he's had 30 some years of working through the feet with the entire person. Self-awareness, self-care, self-expression are just kind of one. And he's amazing, by which I mean could kind of work with any person in any situation. And often in the very first, well, for me, it was the first touch, but certainly in the first session, he has a way of very simply, lightly planting a grounded idea of the possibility that I am whole and well, regardless of what's going on. And that when the attention is put on the whole working well, many things can happen which aren't, I would say, known. They're not known by Western medicine, but it's just the magic or the wonder of living organisms in our body and something that can align all this toward health. So he does amazing work. And people do fly from other countries. Well, they used to for
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, my friends used to come there because someone had a very debilitating illness and no energy. But when he started to work with Dr. Wu, he had some energy, which is just such a gift. You know, we take this energy for granted, but when we don't have it, we realize how it feels. And so to get that life force activated again, however you want to say it, but
the T in that last model I was talking about, energy. This is a huge topic also, but Mr. Wu recently suddenly gave me a download of where he is in his career and what he sees next. And he's mentioned it in the years, I've known him for about 12 years. He's mentioned it sporadically in the past, and then he's been completely silent about it until 2 times ago when I saw him. And he said, okay, Jane, next is purchase the house where it becomes now the center of training and practice, because he's found that he can have considerable, people he works with, particularly children, have considerable unexpected change with cancer diagnoses. And he believes that might be the impactful next step, because he says everyone wants the children to get well, and the children want to get well. And so the entire social system is looking for something different that really works well. So I feel like he has a huge burst of fresh energy about teaching, and then also having this clinic.
And the other thing I feel that supports community is just what I experienced in Tainan, between rows of houses or apartment blocks, but sometimes apartment blocks, there'll be community gardens. And people just voluntarily grow vegetables, go and sit together and let their birds sing, and just walking the streets, it's an experience of community.
Tainan is really unique that way. In all of Taiwan, every place in Taiwan is small, but it seems like everywhere you go, it's a very distinctly different culture. And here, I'm also in the oldest part of town right now where I am. I'm in the back of a house that's at least 150 years old. And there's this feeling here of, there's a lot of things mixed together, but tolerance is certainly one of them, and certainly high awareness of each other. How do we get along really is something people actually say to each other. I'm noticing right now there's an interior decorator.
It's okay. A little bit of noise, but it's okay.
But that's part of it. They actually talked with us when we moved in here. We had conversations. People came and had conversations. It's like I sometimes have this kind of noise at this time. I hope there's no problem. If there is, let me know. Right? Just very simply touching in with an awareness that we want to figure out ways that work for everyone.
Yeah, and I was there when COVID, I first experienced COVID in Taiwan, and I just felt that there was such a social trust is the word. I don't know if I made up that word or I heard it from someone, but the social trust of just knowing that everyone is doing their best to take care of each other. And and Taiwan, I think, has managed COVID very well because of this.
Chinese culture is very unique, and people who study culture in terms of compliance would be my word. And because I've been in Taiwan for a long time, I was in Taiwan in the martial law period. So certainly can feel the difference of trust for the government. And the government finds ways to certainly attempt to be transparent, to let things be known, to have a very quick response when something happens. There was this story that we have a digital minister, and the digital minister shared this story early in the COVID time when everyone had to we still do have a mask when we're outside. And there was a website put up instantly. Now, if you have any issues with government regulations, any questions, just share them here. So this junior high school boy wrote and said, I'm in a, I don't remember, I'm going to have to make this up, but it was a pink. The only kind of mask he had was pink. That was the only thing he could get. And he was feeling shame and embarrassment. And so the digital minister, like within half an hour, I think I heard, answered this boy and set up an arrangement so that like all people in government the next day were encouraged to wear pink masks.
Really?
Yes, really. So it's just stories like this. It's like we actually do care about people, and if there's something we can do, we do it. And it's not we, government, and the people. It's like we. That's what I got the impression. And you were telling me of your story when you ended up at the police station because of some little car incidents, but a lovely story. So tell me which one that was.
That was the one where you ended up at the police station, and in the end, the police was making you a cup of tea, and I think they gave you a picture or something.
Oh, I have a gift from the police, right? Here's the quick story. I don't know our time. Here's the quick story. I was on the throughway. There was a rest station. We had 4 or 5 people in the car. We were out. We came into the car. We closed the doors, and I started moving, but there was one door that hadn't been closed, and it scraped the car next to us, a scrape like that.
Yeah.
And the person wasn't there, but one of the passengers from the car was there. So we stopped immediately, and I gave all of my information. We all sat with her. It was the mother of the owner. And we sat with her. We traded line. We took pictures of my ID. We gave it to her. And maybe half an hour later, she was like feeling okay. And I said, you have everything. And I live in Tainan, and this was in the north. And I said, so you can get anything you need now. It's my fault. I'm very sorry. And yes, I'll take care of anything that you need. So then I left, and I had my phone off because I was driving. And when I got to Tainan, I saw that they'd gotten nervous because they called me and I hadn't answered. And so they called in the police, which they should have anyway, to make a report. And the police then called me and said, here's what they said. Is it convenient for you to come up to the north and fill out a form? And I laughed and I said, well, I noticed you asked me if it's convenient. So no, it's not convenient, but you tell me if I need to. And if I need to, I will. And they were like, well, I'm afraid you need to. So okay, that's okay. So I went up. It's a 2-hour drive, like the next day, not a problem. And I took care of the paperwork, but the policemen were so gracious. Everything was so easy to do. They filled out things for me. They apologized. They explained several times. It really does need to be in person. And I said, well, I understand all of this and it's all fine. And yeah, he offered to take me on a tour of the city, just like
of
really.
The city, a tour of the city.
Above and beyond. I declined. It's like, I think you have better things to do. I didn't say those words, but yeah, I declined. But this desire to be gracious and to have things in place, but not have anyone really offended by, like, no need to have offense, just we need to have these things taken care of.
And I asked Taiwanese people, are Taiwanese people nice to each other also? Because sometimes we get that in Asia, that they're nice to guests. But the Taiwanese people assured me that they're very nice to each other as well.
They're nice to each other, truly. And there is a sense of guest and a Western face. A lot of people are on alert. You know, we want things to go smoothly. This person may not understand how things are. And with me, every day I get people just, oh, you speak Chinese? Oh, you know, I saw you and I wasn't sure. I was afraid my English wouldn't be good enough. I was afraid you might not understand me. just super considerate.
Yeah.
So
super considerate.
I get the joy of that conversation pretty much every day.
Yeah. Because even I came back to Taiwan from India, and I didn't need to isolate because India wasn't amongst the countries that we needed to do that. But our meditation center was in a building where there was a clinic. And so our students asked me to self-isolate because of the clinic. But they brought us organic vegetables and looked after us. And, you know, it wasn't like they're just imposing or pushing. It was like, we really feel it's the best thing to do, but we will support you. And they paid for the vegetables. They didn't just get it delivered. You know, it was so kind and caring. So I just learned a lot. And that's what I miss a lot about Taiwan. I mean, I'm in a very beautiful place, but I'd also leave tomorrow to go to Taiwan because I miss that, the culture. And I have expressed to people that, you know, I didn't think people still exist in the world like that en masse. You know, you might meet one or two that are very pleasant, but I experienced it en masse, and they're very delightful. So I can see why you've ended up there for so long and why community building is happening. And I just wish you all the best for the future. And I know that you actually are one of the attractors also, because people who want community know that they can be supported in that through Studio Tainan. So I know you're one of the attractors. You're super enthusiastic about Tainan, about community, and about enjoying life.
And I don't use this line very often, but it is what goes through my head all the time. It's this question, it's this forever inquiry. What will it take for all 8 or so billion of us to be in meaningful conversation? This goes through my mind all the time. So anything I can do that moves us even the tiniest bit in that direction, I have lots of energy for. And people coming through here are amazing. I just love helping them meet each other and get things going that have life, to use your word, right? Live well.
You support everyone and everything.
To the degree that I can, yes. You know, enthusiastic at least. And people often say, you know, they haven't, when they express these ideas, they hear other people say it's not possible, you can't do this. But Jane goes, yeah, tell me more. How do you think this will work? So there's like a space. I think collectively, people around here also learn. It really feels good to have people just listen and listen into possibility with each other. So it's very satisfying. That's why I do it. One
of the things that I really enjoyed with Studio Tainan is the Conversation Cafe. And I traveled 1.5, 2 hours most weeks when I could to join, because I just found the people so open-minded, so interesting, so diverse. And I remember one of the people who used to join us was on the spectrum. And I was delighted when he said, oh, I thought only I had problems. And I realized all of you got problems too. And we said, yeah, we're all together. And he felt like he's not the only one. And I think that helped all of us. It really helped all of us. But Jane, you were a great support in helping him to be comfortable with everyone. And it was just wonderful. And he still calls me. I still talk to him every week, actually. I know he's written a book about living with autism. And he shares his struggles. And he's a very aware person. It's great.
Indeed. And I think it was really lovely that we had that Conversation Cafe as a place actually anyone can drop into, and they're welcome. And right, certainly with him, everyone noticed how he, do I want to say blossom? I think we all blossom. And it was really noticeable with him. This and I took a picture once when he was coming in, just like a video when he was walking in, and sent it to a friend, and they went, wow, he's not the person he was a year ago. It's like, well, none of us are.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so satisfying to be part of kind of, what is it, digging into our humanity and letting it blossom. My words.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember one particular aspect, you know, maybe he didn't know so much about hygiene at that time, and he didn't, you know, have a very great fragrance. And I talked to you and I said, what can we do to help him? Because we don't want people to feel kind of turned off by that. But even that was handled so kindly and so inclusively. Like, what can we do to support the comfort for him to be in the group, and others also to feel comfortable?
I don't remember what we did with that. Do you remember what happened?
I think you said you would speak to him, and whether you did or not, he didn't have that fragrance after that. So I think you did.
Here's because I know I didn't specifically, and I would go back to that three chamber model, where
right.
when we can self-express, we have energy. It's energy. We have energy to self-care. We notice things we didn't notice before. And so all of this works itself out without needing to put a light as if something is not right. How beautiful.
That's really lovely. And what a nice point to end where we began. So thank you very much, Jane. And you're very good at questions and reflections, and I just wonder if you'd like to leave us with something to ponder.
Well, I think maybe I mentioned it in the middle of the conversation, which is this inquiry. I mean, anyone can join me in this inquiry of this simple sentence: what will it take? What will it take for us, all 8 billion of us, to be in meaningful conversation? And just notice with that inquiry how it might actually affect each moment as we're moving around. Is it a challenge? I would invite that contemplation anytime.
So can you just repeat, what would it take to bring 8 million people,
for all 8 billion of us,
8 billion of us to come into meaningful conversation?
Meaningful conversation, all of us.
And let it start with me, but like you said, Jane, you'll do anything to help make that happen. So that's really what's behind what you do. So thank you so much for joining us all the way from Taiwan, and especially that lovely little corner of the world, Tainan. And it's been just wonderful.
It's great talking to you anytime, Morning. I love it.
Oh,
be well.
You too. Be well.